I mean, what did they think was going to happen? That high-earning individuals would just sit back and let their government take a huge chunk of their income because they've determined that's what's fair? The founders of Washington State didn't think that was fair. That's why they made it illegal to create a tax like this. Anyway, the fact is, smart people who have the ability to leave are going to, and they are, which will create a huge issue for Washington State, which will create a huge issue for Idaho. Hey, remember a couple of months ago when I made a video about Washington and we were talking about the proposed millionaires tax, and I made a joke saying, don't worry, there's no way that'll ever change to apply to everybody and not just millionaires? Well, Washington just passed that bill, 9.9% state income tax on anyone making $1 million or more. But the fact is, it's not going to only apply to millionaires for long. It can't, actually, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Today, we're going to talk about what this tax is going to do to Washington and how that is going to negatively affect Idaho in the long run. And then we will discuss whether Idaho is actually the right fit for you, the real pros, the real cons, and what nobody else is telling you. Let's go. So here's what went down. Washington's legislature just passed Senate Bill 6346. It's a 9.9% income tax on every dollar a household earns over $1 million. They're calling it the millionaires tax, which makes sense because nobody in their right mind would vote for an income tax on themselves. Anyway, it's expected to generate about $3 billion a year. And of course, Washington's already got that money earmarked in their budget. But here's what nobody in Olympia wants to talk about. The trend has already started. Howard Schultz, Mr. Seattle, who started his coffee empire in downtown Seattle, announced he was moving to Miami the same night they were voting on this thing. After 44 years in Washington, he's finally said, I can't do this anymore. Jeff Bezos already left in 2023 after they passed the capital gains tax, and there are many other businesses right now, not billion-dollar corporations, regular businesses announcing they're relocating out of Washington. And this is why it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People who earn over $1 million a year are not stuck. They have the ability to just pick up and leave. The cost of relocating is tiny compared to what they're going to pay in taxes year after year after year. So what happens when they leave? Washington loses that tax revenue they've already budgeted for, which means they're going to cut their budget so they don't have a deficit. Just kidding. They don't do that. They're going to expand that income tax to hundredthousandaires. That's not actually a term people use, but I'm guessing they're going to start using it because, makes them sound wealthy. And if you don't believe me, just look at the patterns. In 2021, Washington passed a 7% capital gains tax, and then they raised it to 9.9%. They also raised the estate tax to 35%, the highest in the nation, and they did end up bringing that back down to 20%, probably because they cooked up this income tax thing, but that's still tied to the highest in the country alongside Hawaii. They even floated a wealth tax, not on selling stocks, just on owning them, just for having investments in your name. That didn't pass the session this time, but trust me, they're going to try again. So for anyone paying attention, they see the trend and are starting to think about their next move. And a lot of people are paying attention. A lot of people are going to leave Washington, and a lot of them are going to come to Idaho. Not all of them, thankfully, but enough. Enough to put real pressure on housing, infrastructure, and public services. Housing is already pretty unaffordable for a lot of locals, and more demand is only going to make that worse. That doesn't mean you shouldn't move here, it just means that Idaho's government has some things to figure out. And I do trust that our local government will see this issue and start to make adjustments to solve this problem. I know it's weird to have faith in the local government right now, but I've been here for 34 years, and so far, Idaho has done a pretty dang good job, so I do think they'll figure it out. But now, let's talk about Idaho. And I know a lot of you are thinking, Trent, Idaho has an income tax. Why would I leave Washington and go somewhere that already taxes my income? That's a fair question. Let me explain. Yes, Idaho has an income tax of 5.3%. Everybody pays it. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And if you're coming from a state that already has zero income tax, 5.3% is going to sound not so great. But here's where it gets interesting. Idaho has no estate tax. None. Washington has the highest estate tax in the country, up to 20%. So if you're one of the people who've built wealth and you're planning on passing it to your kids, because you should, because they deserve it, Are you listening, Mom and Dad? This is a very good thing. And property taxes, this is where people's smiles start to touch their ears. Idaho has a homestead exemption that subtracts $125,000 from the assessed value of your primary residence. That brings the effective property tax down to around 0.4%. Now let's compare that to Western Washington. In King County, the average property tax is around 0.88 to 1%. Snohomish County averages around 0.89 to 1.06%. And Pierce County is right there too at about 1.06%. So if I'm mathing correctly, Idaho is about half as much. Then we have sales tax. Washington's combined state and local sales tax in the Seattle metro is just over 10%. Idaho's is 6%. That's it, 6 tiny percentage points. Now this next one is for my tech workers. RSUs, restricted stock units. If you don't know what those are, RSUs are shares of company stock that your employer grants you as part of your compensation, but you don't actually own them and you can't sell them until they vest, meaning you've stayed at the company long enough to earn them. When they vest, they count as income. The Tax Foundation found that when you combine Washington's new 9.9% income tax with the existing payroll taxes and the way RSUs are treated, the combined rate for high earners in Seattle could now exceed 18%. That would make it the highest effective tax rate on earner income in the country. Let's just think about that for a second. The state had no income tax and is now potentially the most expensive state in the country for certain earners. I bet Idaho's tax rate is starting to sound pretty good right now. Pretty good. And lastly, we have insurance. Health, auto, and homeowners insurance. All of it is cheaper in Idaho. Depending on your household, that can be $1,400 to $4,000 in savings per year, which is about 4 runs to Costco. So yes, Idaho has income tax, but when you add up property taxes, sales tax, estate taxes, insurance costs, and the direction Washington is headed, a lot of people are discovering that Idaho is actually the cheaper place to live overall. And it's a whole lot more predictable than Washington because you don't have local government deciding, you know what, I think your money is my money now. Cough it up. And hey, if you're one of those people starting to run the numbers and you're thinking, yeah, I got to get out of here, reach out to us at the phone number or email address listed below, or you can scan this QR code and schedule a time to talk with me or my team. We talk to people in your exact situation every single day, and we can help you figure out if Idaho makes sense and where in Idaho is the best fit for your lifestyle and your budget. All right, next to the video. Back to the video. Next to the video. Silly. Now here's the thing. Money is a big part of this decision, but for a lot of the people calling us, it's not even the main reason they're leaving. So let's talk about what daily life actually looks like when you make this move, because, that's important. Let's start with something you'll notice on day one, traffic. If you're coming from Seattle Metro, Tacoma, Bellevue, even Everett, you know what it's like to spend an hour going 12 miles. It's miserable. It crushes your soul. At least it crushes my soul. Anyways, you leave for work angry and you come home more angry-er. In North Idaho, you can get across town in about 10 minutes, and your commute might even involve driving past a lake with a mountain in the background. Your biggest traffic problem is getting stuck behind a boat trailer in July, which I'll admit can create feelings of jealousy from time to time. It does. And crime. Crime is a big one. Idaho consistently ranks as one of the lowest crime states in the country. Both violent crime and property crime are well below the national average. And cities like Coeur d'Alene and Boise have maintained relatively low crime rates even as they've grown. How is this possible, you might ask? Well, because there's a lot of guns. There is. Like, everyone has one and they know how to use them, so criminals really do understand what the term mess around and find out means. I know, you've been told guns kill people, but they also keep the crime rate low, so they're not all bad, I guess. So does that mean Idaho is crime-free? No. No state is crime-free. Drug-related crime exists everywhere, so yes, it does exist here in Idaho. If you look at the stats, it looks like small towns can have a high crime rate, but it's because the population is so small that the few incidents that do occur skew the numbers. But compared to what Western Washington is dealing with, it's a totally different world. Now let's talk about the people. And this is where I need to be very honest with you, Seattleites. Idaho is conservative. And I know for a lot of people coming from Western Washington, you've been told that conservative means greedy, cold, uncaring, regressive, and ignorant. That's just the narrative, but that is not what conservative means here. Conservative in Idaho means keeping government small. It means enforcing the laws that are already on the books. It means following the Constitution and upholding the Bill of Rights. It means keep the government out of our lives as much as possible and let us live and raise our children the way we see fit. As long as we're not hurting anyone, we should be left alone. That's it. That's what it means to be conservative here. And I know I'm going to see comments in the comment section because you always have the margins that are a little more extreme and they're not going to agree with it. But I've been here 34 years. I'm telling you, that's what it means to be conservative here. People wave at you. Neighbors help each other. If your truck breaks down on the side of the highway, somebody's going to stop and help you. Nobody's going to ask who you voted for before they hand you a set of jumper cables to get you back on the road. If that sounds like something you've been missing, you're going to love it here. But if that sounds uncomfortable, then we should probably talk about that before you get moved. Now let's talk about the fun stuff, because if you can't enjoy your life, what's the point of saving money on taxes? Idaho is 62% public land, over 35 million acres that belong to you and to me. Lakes, rivers, ski resorts, hiking trails, hunting grounds, and most importantly, it is not overcrowded. And I know Western Washington has incredible outdoor access too. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't, but access is the key word. Try finding a trailhead parking spot on a Saturday in July near Seattle. Try launching a boat without waiting 45 minutes, and try getting a campsite without booking 3 months in advance. It is not going to happen. In North Idaho, you can decide on a Tuesday morning that you want to go fishing, and you can be on the water 20 minutes later, by yourself with nobody else around. That is not an exaggeration, I promise you. That is a regular Tuesday in Idaho. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Trent, this sounds too good to be true. You're right. It is. There's definitely a catch. Let's talk about the stuff that gets people to say, never mind, I'm not moving to Idaho. First thing is going to be the weather. If you're coming from Western Washington, you think you know winter because it rains for 9 months. That's not winter. That's just depression with lots of caffeine. Idaho has real winters: snow, ice, frozen windshields, roads that require actual winter tires. If you love 4 seasons, you're going to love it here. But if the idea of scraping your windshield in the dark at 6 a.m. makes you want to cry, you need to factor that in. We also need to talk healthcare. Now, this has actually expanded a lot in Idaho. We've got new facilities, more providers, and the system has grown significantly in the last few years. For general care, primary physicians, urgent care, you're going to be just fine. But if you need a specialist like a dermatologist, a specialized oncologist, a gentle proctologist, which I don't know, I haven't found one yet, you might get referred to Spokane. And in some cases, you might even get sent back to Seattle for certain procedures. It's not a deal breaker for most people, but it's something you should know going in. And entertainment, this is a tough one because Seattle is amazing for entertainment. Idaho, not so much. If you need concerts, professional sports, a dozen restaurant options for every cuisine, you're going to want to go to Boise. Boise actually offers a lot of that. Coeur d'Alene, not so much. But Spokane is only 40 minutes from Coeur d'Alene, so you've got access to concerts, comedy shows, and a solid restaurant scene. Outside of those 2 hubs, Idaho is pretty quiet. I don't mean peaceful quiet. I mean there might not be a movie theater or even a bowling alley in your quiet little town. If you need constant stimulation, that's going to catch up to you. And of course, we need to talk about income. I'm not going to lie to you, wages in Idaho are lower. If you're not bringing remote work, a business, or a retirement income, you need to have a plan. The average skilled worker in Idaho is making around $28 an hour. And to live comfortably covering your wants, your needs, and putting something into savings, you really need to be closer to $45 an hour. That's a little bit of a gap. The people who thrive here are the ones who come for the lifestyle and adapted to the economy, not the other way around. Housing has gone up a lot. You're not going to get a house on the golf course for $120,000 like my parents did in the 90s. But compared to King County, where median home price is pushing $850,000 or more, your dollar goes significantly further, like a lot further. Now, who is Idaho actually built for, and who should probably look somewhere else? Idaho works for remote workers, business owners, retirees, and families who want outdoor access, community, and freedom without the government breathing down their necks. It works for people who are okay trading some convenience for quality of life. People who don't need someone to entertain them every weekend because they've got a boat, a pair of hiking boots, and a freezer full of delicious elk meat. It works for people who are tired of watching their state change into something they don't recognize and want to live somewhere that actually shares their values. It does not work for people who expect the state to bend to them. If you're moving here hoping Idaho will eventually become more like the place you just left, don't. Both Idaho and the people who live here will push back culturally, economically, and socially. It doesn't work for people who can't handle long winters, lower wages, or driving a little further for certain services. Those things are real and they're not changing anytime soon. But here's what I think is the most important thing to say in this whole video. The really great thing about Idaho is they're leaning even harder into staying conservative, keeping government small, and staying within their budget to avoid using the law to fleece their constituents. Is it perfect? No. It's government. It's always going to be at least a little broken, but at least you can trust they aren't going to use their state's constitution as toilet paper. Washington changed the deal. Idaho hasn't, and it's not planning to. If you're serious about making this move, reach out at the phone number or email address listed below, or scan this QR code to get a hold of me and my team. You can actually schedule a time to talk with us, so it's not just a random phone call and we might be playing phone tag, so it's better. Click right here, probably over here, for the next video, and I will see you later.